Hello, 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 hello. Happy Friday. Yay. We made it. We made it. We made it. Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for joining. Listen, today's conversation is going to be good. It is going to be good. Happy Friday. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining. We made it. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. I hope you all had a wonderful, wonderful week. I hope you are ready for today's conversation because we are going to get into it. And also, just a preview, y'all. We have almost done 100 episodes of Nick at Noon. So I'm curious, how do you want to celebrate our 100th episode? Let me know in the comments. How do you want to celebrate our 100th episode of Nick at Noon? Do you want me just to do the regular, income diversity conversation that I normally do, talking about all things strategy, tools, and mindset when it comes to building your coaching income, digital products, and online businesses? Or do you want to do just more of a let's just hang out for a little bit of time and figure out, let me see, what day is our 100th episode? I feel like it's September 16th, but I could be totally wrong. I think I'm right. I think our 100th episode is on September 16th. So we're having this conversation just, a few weeks in advance. So let me know what it is that you want to do for our 100th episode. I mean, I can come up with my own thing and, figure out what we're going to do on my own time. But yeah, 100 episodes. I have something really special planned to celebrate, but for that particular day, I want to know what it is that you want to see, okay? Anyway, let's get into this conversation because it's going to be good. I'm going to be talking about why skills are the new currency. So, welcome back to another episode of Nick at Noon. My name is Nick Scott. If you're new here, hello. I am the founder and CEO of Her Income Edit. We are an online education platform that's designed to help women turn their skills into coaching income, digital products, and online businesses so they can earn more, depend less on traditional employment, and design a life on their terms. If you haven't already, I encourage you to go get your notebook and your pens or whatever it is that you take notes on. Go get your water, your tea, your coffee, your juice, your cocktail, your wine, whatever it is that you're sipping on. Settle in, get comfortable, because this is going to be a good conversation. Share the link to this video in the group chat. Text it to a friend who keeps saying that she wants to build something for herself, because this conversation is one that I have wanted to have for a while, but I didn't want to rush it. So if you are on your lunch break, if you are listening to this in your car, if you are doing something else while this plays, like putting the dishes away or folding clothes, or if you're just engaged with me right here, giving this video a thumbs up and showing me some love on YouTube, listen, I'm going to ask that whatever you're doing, that you kind of just take a pause, take a break, except for showing me love on YouTube. Keep doing that. I love to see the love. I love you right back. I just want you to take a pause. If you're folding clothes or putting dishes away or doing something, at the same time, just pause. And I want you just to be here, because what I'm going to share today, it truly has the potential to change how you see your career, to change how you see your skills, and to truly change your financial future. And I'm not saying that in a hype way. I'm saying that in this genuinely makes sense and you can do this kind of way. Okay? Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for joining. So let me start with something real. And I want you to think about the last time that you felt financially safe. And I don't mean financially safe in the sense that my count isn't in the negative safe. I mean, okay. And I don't mean that the kind of safe where you hit your savings goal. I mean the kind of safe that comes from knowing at a felt and embodied level that if something changed for you tomorrow, that you would be okay. Because for most women that I talk to, that feeling is surprisingly hard to find. And it's striking because these are not women who haven't worked. These are women who have done everything they were told to do. These are women who have built careers. They have earned titles. They have put in hours. They've navigated politics. They took the stretch assignments that were supposed to lead somewhere, right? These are women that have decades of institutional knowledge and a track record that would look excellent on paper. And yet, there is still this low-key financial anxiety that doesn't ever really quiet down. Not even when you have a good month. Not even when you have a good month. Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for joining. And if you're nodding right now, I want you to know that this isn't a confidence problem. I want you to know that this isn't a spending problem. It is not a you need to be more grateful for what you have problem. This is a structure problem. And the structure is something that we can talk about and do something about. And we can do something about it today. Because here's what I have come to understand after years of building my own income streams and working with professional women who are doing the same thing. That financial anxiety that you have, it's not anxiety about money. It is your nervous system responding and accurately responding to the reality that your financial life is sitting on one single point of failure. I'm talking about one stream of income from one 9 to 5, one budget cycle, one conversation in a corner office that you don't even have control over. And that is not irrational anxiety, y'all. That is your intuition doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And the fact that you are here listening to this, watching this, the fact that you are subscribed to my channel, the fact that you engage with my content, the fact that you are paying attention, it means that you're already responding to your intuition in a productive direction. Because you wouldn't even be here if something in you wasn't already paying attention to the signals. Like the layoffs that keep happening in industries that used to feel stable, the promotions that keep landing with the same profile of a person while you watch from the next rung down, the raise conversations that got circled back to budget cycles and timing for the third year in a row, the return to office mandate that came with a corporate memo designed to sound reasonable while dismantling the flexibility that made your demanding job workable and flexible for your life, you are paying attention to all of those things. And paying attention to it and calling it what it is and thinking about it and chewing on it and sitting with it, that means you are already further along than most people who will only figure this out when they have to. So you're already thinking about it, or you wouldn't even be here. So here's what I want to do today. I want to talk about skills. I want to talk about what your skills are worth beyond what your 9 to 5 is paying you for them. I want to talk about why the way most of us have been conditioned to think about income is low-key working against us. And I want to talk about what changes when you start treating your skills as something you own rather than something that you rent to your company. And by the end of this conversation, I want you to walk away with a completely different lens on what's possible for you and a very clear next step if you're ready to act on it, okay? So I want to take a moment just to completely rewire how most of us have been taught to think about skills, because I think that the default framework is limiting what you're willing to imagine for yourself. I'm talking about the framework that most of us have absorbed without even realizing we've absorbed this thing. So here's the framework we were given. This is what we were taught. We were taught that skills have a fixed market value, that value is expressed in the form of a salary. We have been taught that the way to increase your value is to perform better, to accumulate more credentials, and to wait for your company to recognize and reward it, right? And that's the model that many of us were given. That's what we were taught, that's what we were trained. And for a long time, it was functional enough that nobody even questioned it, at least not out loud. Like 10 years ago, there never would have been somebody like me on the internet talking about income diversification in the way that I talk about it, because we didn't even question it, right? But here's something that that model completely leaves out. And once you see it, I promise you will not be able to unsee this. Listen to me when I say your skills do not belong to your employer. Your skills do not belong to your 9 to 5. Your skills do not belong to your job, okay? The strategic thinking that you have spent years developing, the way that you can break down complex problems and you can reconnect that into something the room can act on, that belongs to you, boo. Listen, the systems that you built, the teams that you've led, the situations you've navigated, the clients you retained when the environments made it harder than it should have been, all that is yours. Your company did not create that. Your employer did not create that. You created that. Now, your job provided the context, but you brought the capability. And your capability, unlike your job, it travels. So here is how I want you to think about this, because I think this is going to reshape what you're allowing yourself to visualize and to imagine. Okay? And if you're taking notes, this might be where you might want to start jotting some things down. So every skill has two markets. Every single skill, okay? So the first market is the job market. And this is where you trade your time and your skills for your salary and for your benefits. And the job market is more or less, it's predictable. It gives you a structure, and it has a ceiling. And it's not a ceiling that is set by what your skills are worth. It is a ceiling that is set by what someone else's budget approved for your role. Okay, that's the job market. The second market is direct value exchange. And here's what I mean by that. So this is the market where your skills meet a specific person with a specific problem, and then you solve that problem. And it is not solved as someone who clocked in. You're solving it as someone who owns your skills, and you decide how to price and position those skills. Okay? So those are the same skills, two different markets, and a completely different ceiling. A completely different cap, if you will, okay? So now I want to be very clear about what I mean by second market, because it's easy to hear that and think, oh, she means freelancing. She means getting a consulting gig. But I truly mean something more fundamental than that. I mean a completely different economic relationship. I'm talking about one where you are the architect of what your skills are worth. You are the architect. You get to determine who has access to your skills, under what conditions, at what price, and for how long, and on what terms. I'm not talking about a side hustle here. I'm talking about ownership. And ownership is a different category it's a different category than employment, and even highly compensated employment. There's something else that I want to push back on while we're talking about this, because this is one of the most limiting beliefs that I see women carry around with them without even ever stopping to look at this thing. And this is the idea that the skills that quote quote unquote count, they're the ones that came with credentials attached to them. So the skills that count only count because you have a degree or a certification or a license or a title, as if the credential is the skill, when the credential is just your ticket into the room where you built the skill. So your degree is very valuable because it's going to get you the interview. And your job is what teaches you what you know. And what you know, I'm talking about the practice, lived, field tested, you have been in the room version of what I'm talking about. That's what people pay for. They're not paying for a piece of paper. They're paying for the depth of understanding behind the piece of paper. Are y'all picking up what I'm putting down? Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for joining. Now, let me give you a concrete example of what I mean. So, a regulatory affairs specialist, okay? At a pharmaceutical company, she doesn't just know compliance. She knows how to translate dense regulatory language into something a team can operationalize under deadline pressure. This specialist, she knows where the real risk is versus where it only looks like risk. She knows how to build a submission strategy that holds up under scrutiny, and she knows how to stay calm when the goalposts move. So her credential, it got her in the door. But a decade of navigating submissions, that's what built her skills. And those skills have a market that are far beyond one company's legal department. So I want you to think about what you've built in the last 5 to 10 years. Not what you've been formally certified in. I want you to think about what you figured out, what you've navigated under pressure, what you've created from nothing because someone put it on your plate because they knew you could handle it. That's just not your professional background. That is a curriculum. And curriculum is where this thing, your skill, all of your knowledge, all of your experience, all of your expertise, this is when it's organized into an accessible framework and it's delivered to someone who needs it, and it's a product. And this is what I mean when I say that skills are the new currency, because currency holds value across different contexts. You have it. You can exchange currency. Like, you literally carry currency. You can exchange it. And the worth of that currency, it doesn't disappear because you change locations, right? $1 in the United States of America in Denver, Colorado is worth the exact same amount if I were in Bangkok, Thailand. And your skills work the same way. If you understand how to position your skills outside the single context of where they've been living, which is your job, listen, the constraint is not what you know. The constraint is where you thought you were allowed to offer your skills. Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for joining. I see the love on YouTube. Hey, happy Friday. Now, I want to be very clear and direct with you for a few minutes. And I want to be very clear and upfront that nothing I'm about to say is designed to scare you. I'm not saying it to scare you. I'm not a fear monger. I don't do fear-based stuff, okay? I am not a doom and gloom person, and that is not what we do here. That is not what I'm about. But I also am not about to soften something that deserves to be said very clearly, very plainly, because the women who are most at risk, they're usually the ones who are the most insulated from the hard truths by the comfort of a salary that's currently hitting their bank account every 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Your 9 to 5, the idea of a 9 to 5, it is not going anywhere as a structure. Like, that system is always going to continue to exist. Employment will always be a very viable path. But the safety in your 9 to 5, the safety that a 9 to 5 used to represent, the implicit promise of stability in exchange for your loyalty and performance, that has already changed, y'all. And this isn't theory. It is documented and it is verifiable. I talk about it on my LinkedIn all the time. There's articles every week that I'm giving my commentary on. The wave of layoffs that have swept through the professional landscape over the past few years, that wasn't confined to just a single industry or a single sector. It wasn't just a tech story. This has happened in media, in biotech, in financial services, in logistics, in retail operations, in higher education, in government contracting, in architecture, in design, you name it. Listen, entire departments dissolved on a Friday afternoon with severance packages that didn't come close to accounting for the years of institutional knowledge that was walking out the door. And I can't make this stuff up. People who have been with their companies for 15 and 20 years, they found out via a Zoom calendar invite and a random HR number they've never seen before, HR member they've never seen before. And the thing that most of these women said afterward, it wasn't about money. When they're laid off, the thing that they're saying is not money. What they're saying is, I knew I should have built something else while I had the time. And I want to talk about something else that I feel like gets missed in most income conversations. And that is, your 9-to-5 was never designed to be your only plan. And I know that sounds like a paradox because we've been living inside an economic culture that treated employment as the goal. We have been told to get a job, keep a job, grow with the job, and if you do it long enough and well enough, your job is going to take care of you. But listen, that was built for a different era in time with a very different structure underneath it. This was built during a time where pension systems guaranteed long-term safety. This was built during a time where hiring practices built around decades-long tenure. This is built during a time where a social contract between an employer and an employee, it assumed mutual investment in each other. There was reciprocity in it. There's no longer reciprocity. There's no longer loyalty. Well, there's no longer loyalty on the side of these employers. The employees, we're still loyal, right? And that era has ended, y'all. And it didn't end with one announcement. It has ended incrementally in policy changes and restructuring cycles and realignment of priorities that each felt survivable when they're isolated, right? But until the cumulative effect was a completely different deal than the one that our culture told us that we signed up for. And for women specifically, this is affecting us in a very different way because the structural disadvantages that already existed for women, I'm talking about the document. Let me even narrow it down further. Women of color, the structural disadvantages that already existed for us, the documented compensation gaps, the advancement patterns that consistently plateau certain profiles, certain types of people, while others get to move through, the invisible tax on professional women who are also carrying primary caregiving responsibilities, alongside 50-hour work weeks, those structural disadvantages that already existed, they have not been fixed, y'all. And the DE&I commitments that briefly created the impression, it gave us this false sense of reality that the table was, that there was room at the table. A lot of organizations are retracting all of that in the language of a fiscal responsibility and focus. And that means the women who are counting on institutional systems to eventually level the field for them, they're now navigating a path that just got even more narrow without any public acknowledgement that it even happened. And I'm not telling you this to make you feel powerless. I'm telling you this because the most empowered decisions come from honest information. And the honest information is this: a single stream of income is the riskiest financial position you can be in when you have the skills and the information to build a second stream of income. And I want to say something else that's really important, and I really, really, really want you to hear what I'm about to say. I am not saying that your job is the enemy. Don't be out here saying Nick Scott told me to quit my job, because that's not what I'm saying. I'm not even saying that your 9 to 5 is a trap and you need to escape it like immediately. I'm not saying any of that. Because what I am saying is that you should build something alongside your 9 to 5, because that's the move. Building something alongside your 9 to 5 while your income is still stable and predictable, that is strategy. What I'm saying is the goal is not to leave your job. The goal is to stop being held hostage by your job. And there is a profound difference between staying in your job because you want to be there and staying there because you feel like you don't have any other viable option. Right? Because one of those feels like autonomy and the other feels like something that's a whole lot more suffocating. And the only thing that converts the second thing that I just described into the first thing is income that doesn't depend on your career continuing to go exactly as you would dream for it to go. Because multiple streams of income are not for people who have already made it. This is a sign of income. Let me back up. Multiple streams of income, they're not a sign of income instability or hustle culture. So multiple streams of income, when you have them, it doesn't mean that your finances are not stable. It doesn't mean that you're subscribing to hustle culture. Multiple streams of income are what it looks like when a strategic woman decides to protect what she's built. Okay? Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for joining. So let's, if you would, just, roll along with what I'm about to do. I want to give you a thought experiment, okay? I want you to imagine that 12 weeks from now, something in your job shifted. It wasn't a catastrophe or a crisis, but something shifted in your job that you felt it. So 12 weeks from now, maybe it was a leadership change. Maybe it was a rumor of restructuring. Maybe it was a project that you were leading that quietly got reassigned while you were on vacation, and you were the one who actually invented the thing, and then it got reassigned to somebody else. If that sounds personal, that happened to me. Listen, in that moment, what would it feel like to know that you had income coming in that didn't depend on how any of that shook out? What would it feel like for you to go into the next all hands meeting knowing that the outcome didn't define your financial situation? Because that feeling right there, that is what her income edit is all about. That is what we're building toward. It's not just about the income, y'all. It is about the kind of options that the income creates. You feel me? So far in this conversation, we have talked about what your skills are worth. We have talked about why a single stream of income carries more risk than most of us were trained to even recognize. Now I want to talk about the specific vehicle, the specific container. I want to talk about the income stream structure that I think is the most accessible, the most aligned with what women already have, and the most underestimated, and that is coaching. And before you have any type of visceral reaction to that word, I want you to stay here and listen for a second, because the word coaching has been through a lot over the last few years. It has been through a lot over the last few years because the online space has stretched the word coaching to mean everything from life transformation to someone with a Canva template and 3 months of Instagram posts telling you to step into your power, right? And that's not what I'm talking about. At its core, coaching is just the transfer of skills. It is the transfer of knowledge. It is the transfer of experience. So literally, it's you know something and someone else needs to know it. So you help them bridge the distance faster with more strategy and with fewer details than if they'd have navigated that path on their own. That's what coaching is. So with coaching, the client changes, the topic changes, and the format changes, but the core transaction of coaching is the same. And the core transaction is one that you have been doing in some shape, form, or fashion inside your career, inside your community, inside your family, inside your life. You've been doing this longer than you probably realize. When you trained a colleague on a system that you built, and she got it in 2 conversations because of how clearly you explained it, that was coaching. When your team came to you before a high stakes presentation because you have a way of cutting through the noise and getting what needed to be said and getting to the bottom line, that was coaching. When someone on the other side of the organization adopted the process that you built for your team because they saw how impactful it was and what it was doing, and then they reached out directly to you to understand the thinking behind it, that was coaching. So you've been doing the work of a coach inside the walls of your company, inside the walls of your job, inside the walls of an institution. The only thing you haven't done is build the structure that lets you do that work, that specific work, independently and on your terms. And I want to address a question that comes up every single time this conversation comes up when women start really considering this seriously. And that is the credential question of, do you need a certification? And let me tell you what I know from watching this space and from working in this space. Coaching clients are not buying credentials. They are buying results. They are buying the lived experience of someone who has navigated exactly what they're navigating. They are buying the lived experience of someone who has been inside the complexity, who has made the decisions, who has absorbed the consequences and came out with real wisdom. That right there is your qualification. You don't need a certification. You don't need to go get another master's degree or a PhD. You don't need a weekend intensive. You don't need any of that. Because your 10, 15, 20 years of doing the thing, it is worth more to a client who's trying to figure it out than any introductory course in how to ask good questions. Now, let me talk about what this looks like in practice, because I think there are 2 common pictures or visions or visuals that people have when they imagine building a coaching business, and they're both slightly off, okay? So the first visual is it's complicated, right? You feel like you need a website, you feel like you need a full content strategy, a podcast, a massive social media presence, a funnel built in 3 different software tools, and 6 months before you can see $1. Is that what you're picturing when I said coach? The other visual that you might have is that it's instant. That you put up one post and clients start to materialize. You feel like if I build it, they will come. And the truth about coaching is neither of those. What starting in this looks like is an offer, one specific outcome you help one specific person achieve. It is clarity on who that person is. It is a simple and direct way to communicate that to the people who are already in your network. That is the starting line. It is not a brand, it is not a content calendar, and it is definitely not 10,000 followers. It is one offer to one person and a way to reach that person. And the math is worth mathing here, because I think a lot of people hear the word coaching business and they imagine something that takes years to produce any type of meaningful income. And that is not the model that we build inside of my program, Ignite. I'm talking about a coaching offer that is priced at a rate that puts respect and it reflects your level of skill with a handful of clients per month that can meaningfully change your income picture. And it's not because it replaces your salary. It's because, listen, this isn't designed to replace your salary unless you want it to. It changes your picture because now you have a second lane. You have the option to start to create breathing room, to give you options to reduce the financial pressure that's currently sitting all on one source of income. And that change in your financial picture, it creates a change in everything else. It changes how you show up at work. It changes how you approach risk. It changes what you're willing to ask for, because you know you're going to be okay regardless. Another thing that I hear often is, ain't nobody got time for this. I don't have time to build this. And I want to meet that with a lot of care and not a list of productivity tips. Because if you are a woman with a full job and a full life, your schedule is real. Like, the time is time, right? You're already being pulled in different directions. So I'm not going to dismiss that, but I do want to offer just a different way to look at it, because most of us don't have a time problem. We have a clarity problem. And when you're unclear on what you're building, when you are unclear on your offer, when you are unclear on what the next step is, when you are unclear on whether or not this will work, you don't have a reason to prioritize your hours. But when you're clear, when you know the exact thing that you need to do, you would be surprised at how much time appears in the margins of a life that you thought was completely maxed out. Because clarity creates momentum in this, and momentum makes things happen that feel impossible until they're possible. You have been investing in your employer's asset for years. It might be time for you to start investing in your own. Listen, every system that you've designed, every problem you solved, every insight you've earned through showing up and doing the work, all of that you've created, it's created value for your company, for your job, for your organization. And guess what? It can create value for you too, but only if you build the structure that allows it to. Okay? Most women have been embedded in what I'm going to call a 9-to-5 identity for so long that the line between who they are and where they work, it has gotten real blurry. And that means when you start thinking about building something outside of your 9-to-5, when you start thinking about building something independent of that, when you start thinking about building something that's yours, the fear that shows up is not logistical. The fear that shows up is, who am I outside of this role? If I step outside of this title, will anything that I know, will it still count? And I want to tell you exactly what I've seen in this. And this is across the women that I've worked with, and it's my own story as well. The answer to those questions is almost always a lot more juicy than the job allowed you to express. Because your job, it gave you a context. You have a scope of work, you have a budget, you have a hierarchy, you have a set of deliverables that shape how your credibility gets to show up, right? And let's be clear, that context is useful. And it gives you a nice solid structure to work within. But it also contains you. It's a box. Because your 9 to 5, it wasn't built to maximize what you're capable of. It is built to maximize what your employer needs from you. Your job is not designed to maximize what you're capable of. Your job, the system of employment, is designed to maximize what it needs from you at any given moment. And those are different things. So when you step outside of your job, guess what? You get to define the scope. You get to define the scope. Right? Listen, your title, it names one aspect of your skill. Your skill is bigger than your title. And when you stop introducing yourself by the container your skill has been living in, and you start describing what you can do, the market for this gets a whole lot bigger, because it's now not just one employer, right? The other thing that I want to address is the who am I to coach someone on this, right? Like, who am I? I'm not an expert. And listen, I hear it. I've said it myself. But I want you to look at this more closely, because that voice is almost always doing one of two things. It's either comparing your beginning to somebody else's middle. It's measuring yourself against someone who has years of iteration and client results and assuming that you need to be where they are before you start. Or it's using an invisible, ever-shifting standard of ready that conveniently moves every time you get close to getting ready. And neither of that is useful, and neither of them is about your capability, because readiness is not a destination. Readiness is a decision. And the women who are building things worth talking about, they are not the ones who waited until every condition was perfect. They are the ones who decided that what they knew was enough to get started, and that the next level of knowledge would come from the doing, not from the waiting. I say it all the time. The genius is in the doing. The genius is not in the waiting. And that access right there is available to you with what you already know, with what you have already done, with the track record that you've already built inside of a career that wasn't even fully yours. Imagine what you could build when you're building something that is yours. Becoming someone different in this is not a requirement. You need to recognize that who you already are is exactly what someone else is looking for. It is exactly what someone else is looking for. Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for joining. So I want to talk about something else that I feel like is keeping a lot of capable women in the planning stage and the research stage longer than they need to be, and that is timing. Not the question of should you build something, because most people who are watching this, you already know that you should be building something. If you're here, if you are in my ecosystem, you already know that you should be building something along the side of your 9 to 5. You already know that your job is not the only plan. You already know how fragile this economy is. You already know it, or you wouldn't even be here. The question is, when should you do this, right? And that answer usually shows up. When that answer shows up is, you tell yourself, well, when I'm more settled, when the summer is over, when my kids are older, when work slows down, when I have more clarity on this thing, when I feel ready. We just talked about ready, right? And here's the thing about all of that thinking. It treats all of the conditions for starting as something that exists outside of you. Like you have to wait for permission for something outside of you to get started in this. And it assumes that clarity is a weather pattern. Like the sun needs to be shining in order for me to get started. And once it does, I'll be able to see clearly enough to start. But here's the thing. clarity, in my experience, it doesn't show up before action. It shows up during action. The women who have built something meaningful on the side of their 9 to 5, they didn't start because the conditions were perfect. They started because they decided that the cost of not starting, it was higher than the discomfort of a messy beginning. And the other thing that I want to say about timing, because I feel like this matters more than people usually even acknowledge, and that is, you want to build something when you don't have to build something, right? I kind of alluded and touched on this earlier. You want to start building something on the side of your 9 to 5 while your income is stable, when you have the margin to be patient while you're learning. You want to start building this thing when the slow first month, it doesn't create a crisis for you. Because the worst time to build your second stream of income is after the thing that made it feel unnecessary is gone. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Because the thing about it is, building this thing before you need it is the most strategic version of this move, y'all. Because urgency, crisis mode is a terrible teacher. And you deserve to build something in the conditions that allow you and allow this thing to grow. Listen, the best time to build your next stream of income is before you need one. The second best time is right now while you still don't. Right? And I say this all the time, y'all. I say this all the time. The income conversation, I feel like it stops at income. And income in this, it is not the mission. The mission is options. And that word, options, it might sound smaller than it is. And I want to tell you exactly what I mean by options, right? Options are waking up on a Monday and knowing you're at the job, you're at your job because you want to be, not because you don't have anything else to lean on or land on. Options is having a conversation with your manager about flexibility or compensation from a place that's grounded instead of a place that's desperate. Options is seeing an opportunity that genuinely excites you and being able to say yes to that opportunity without running a financial calculus in your head that ends in, I can't afford to risk it. That right there is what multiple streams of income buy you. It's not just about the money. It is the psychological freedom that money creates when it's not living all in one place. Right? And I want to talk about what that type of freedom does to everything else in your life. Because when you're not financially dependent on one source of income, you stop tolerating things that you would never tolerate if you had a choice. So the culture that starts to eat away at you, the leadership that consistently undervalues what you bring, the advancement track that keeps telling you your time is almost here, but it never quite shows up, those things have power over you exactly to the degree that your paycheck depends on them. So when you have a second stream of income, even if it doesn't replace your whole salary, something will shift in how you show up. Because you're going to stop shrinking. Because you know you have something else. And that knowledge, it changes your posture and it changes the way that you walk into every single room. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about options. I'm talking about freedom. Options do not materialize on their own, y'all. Like, nobody is going to send an email about a second stream of income. Nobody's going to tap you on the shoulder at your next performance review and say, you know what? Let me help you diversify your income. Nobody at your job has any vested interest in you. Hold on. Let me rewind it back. Your job, it has a vested interest in you staying exactly where you are, and that is engaged and available and financially dependent on them continuing to employ you. And that is not your job being malicious. That is your job doing what jobs do. That's the structure of a job. And the only person who has both the power and the incentive to change that structure for you is you. So the question that I really want you to think about is this. If 12 weeks from now, you had built a coaching offer, you knew exactly who it was for, you had a clear path for reaching those people, and you have had made your first sale, what would be different about the way that you walked into work the next day? What would be different about the way you thought about your career when you weren't depending on it to be your only thing? Because that feeling that you just felt when I asked you that question, that shift in your posture, that shift in possibility, that shift in peace, that is what we're building. It is not just about the income, y'all. It is about the sense of ownership that comes from knowing you are someone who builds things. You're not just someone who works for things. Listen, the women who build a second stream of income, they're not the one who took the risk. They're the ones who finally stopped carrying the risk that she never had to carry. And that is exactly why I want to tell you what's available right now. Enrollment for Ignite is open right now today. The next cohort kicks off on September 14th. If you don't know what Ignite is, it is my 12-week group coaching program for professional women who are ready. It is my 12-week group coaching program for professional women who are what? Ready. Somebody drop ready in the comments to build a coaching income stream from the skills that they have spent years developing. You don't have to wait until perfect conditions. You can start on September 14th. Because over those 12 weeks, we're going to build your offer together. We're going to clarify exactly who it's for. We're going to create a path to your clients. And we're going to get you to your first or next sale. And that is the outcome of these 12 weeks. Listen, you're not going to be joining a class of 100 people. Because what I just described, it requires attention, it requires feedback, it requires accountability, and it requires a room of women who are in it with you. And that means I always limit the number of seats for this. You will never walk into Ignite and there'll be hundreds of women up in there. I've had that experience myself, and that is not the way that I've built my programs. Now I want to talk directly to you for a second. You, okay? If you have been sitting with the idea of building something, if you have been in the I know I need to do this space for a while and you haven't crossed into the I'm doing this space, I want to gently ask you, what has waiting cost you? And I'm not trying to be, have a guilt trip here. I just want to have a real honest conversation. And I want to have a real honest conversation about accountability. Because every month that passes is a month of income that didn't hit your bank account. Every month that passes is a month of options that you didn't build. Every month that passes, it is a month of carrying a financial weight that a second stream of income could have started to just lift up a little bit, lighten that burden a little bit. Ignite doesn't require you to have everything figured out. It requires you to be ready to do the work with someone who is walking alongside you, giving you the step-by-step framework, giving you the feedback, giving you the structure to move from clarity to clients in 12 weeks. That is what Ignite is designed to do. And that's what it's doing. That's what it's done. And if you want the full details, the breakdown of the curriculum, how much it costs, the enrollment process, I want you to head over to my website at herincomeedit.com/ignite, or you can click the link down in the description because everything is there. And if you want to drop a comment or reach out with questions after you've had a chance to look through it, I'm here. You can email me. You can ask your questions in the comments. You can send me a message on Instagram or LinkedIn. If you are watching this live or you're watching the replay, you can comment the word ignite below and I will send you the link directly. You can go to my website at herincomeedit.com/ignite, or you can click the link in the description. And before I let you go, I want you to leave out of this conversation with one thing. You have been using your best skills to build something of value your entire career. Every single day you show up, every year you've showed up, every problem you solved, every skill you've sharpened, all of that has been creating an asset. That asset has just been living in someone else's business, but it doesn't have to stay there. And September 14th is when we start moving it, okay? Your skills have always been an asset. Ignite is how you start to finally own them, okay? I want to thank each and every one of you for popping in and out of today's live. I never take it for granted that you all show up and spend any amount of time with me. Thanks for the love. I hope each of you have a wonderful weekend. Happy Friday. Enrollment for Ignite is open. You can head to my website at herincomeedit.com/ignite. Click the link down in the description. All the information is on the landing page. If you have any questions, send me an email. Drop it in the comments. Hit me up on Instagram or LinkedIn, and I'll make sure that you get your question answered. My name is Nick Scott. This has been another episode of Nick at Noon. I am here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at noon Mountain Time, talking all things strategy, tools, and mindset when it comes to coaching income, digital products, and online businesses. If that is something that you are interested in learning, knowing, and growing in, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button, turn your bell notifications on, share this video with a friend. Share this with a friend. Do not keep it to yourself. I hope y'all have a wonderful weekend, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.